Joey Porter Jr. was the best rookie corner that played a significant amount of snaps last year. The Steelers got him with the first pick in the second round, and I think he's on his way to becoming one of the best press corners in the NFL. He allowed the lowest completion percentage when targeted among qualifying corners. He ranked in the top 10 in success rate, EPA per target, yards per cover snap. He was heavily penalized, but statistically, he was already a top 20 to 25 corner as a rookie, and he did that while being asked to shadow every team's number one receiver in press man coverage for pretty much the entire game. I've seen some people say he had the highest shadow rate in the NFL last year. I don't have access to the stats to verify that, but it definitely passes the eye test. Whether it's DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, they weren't just dropping him back in the deep third and having him cover grass. He was on an island playing the most difficult matchups available, and he had as much success as you could expect for a rookie corner. This plot shows he had the 12th highest separation prevented last season, aka the 12th lowest separation allowed, and the film verifies this. Most of Joey Porter Jr.'s reps end with him glued to the receiver's hip, and I expect him to be the type of corner that just doesn't get targeted because quarterbacks look to his side pre-snap, see him in press, and decide to go somewhere else with the ball. The number one thing that Joey Porter Jr. already does at an elite level is playing press coverage against outside releases. If you need someone for one play to cover a go or a slot fade from press coverage, there aren't 5 corners that I would take ahead of Joey Porter Jr. He has 34-inch arms, which is almost unheard of for a corner. His punch is so disruptive at the line of scrimmage, he can completely smother releases and end routes right off the snap, and his wingspan is just overwhelming. You see this play against Zay Flowers. Porter doesn't even move his feet. He just holds his ground, gives a two-hand punch. Zay tries to power through him, but it doesn't go anywhere. But the important thing to remember with press coverage is you jam with your hands, but you reroute with your body, and specifically your feet. There's 6'2", 6'3" corners in every draft class that don't get drafted highly because even though they can punch a receiver in a phone booth, when they have to kick step and mirror a release with their feet, it looks like they're moving in quicksand. Now, a few years ago, when everyone was still trying to recreate the Legion of Boom, those players would get drafted a little bit earlier, but being built like an edge rusher doesn't make you a good cornerback. What makes Joey Porter Jr. great is his combination of size and athletic traits with footwork and lateral movement skills. His frame and wingspan is going to automatically flatten most receivers' releases. Just the fact that he's so big and has such a far reach, that's going to force receivers to really widen out their release just to avoid contact. You see this play against the Cardinals, it's not even press man, it's 3rd and 5, the Steelers are in cover 2. Porter technically has flat responsibility, but if there's no routes in the flat, he's just going to sync with the vertical route from the number 1. But look at Marquise Brown's starting alignment and where he ends up to finish the play. All of that ground that he has to cover laterally when he's arcing his release to the outside, it's removing space between himself and the sideline so he can work back to the football, but it's also taking up time on 3rd and short for the pass rush to close in. So Porter's size and the fact that he can move his feet at all completely disrupts the timing of the play. Kyler doesn't have anywhere to go with the football. By the time he starts to work back to the front side, Alex Highsmith is bending around the corner for the sack. And when he does get targeted, you see routinely on his tape that any kind of vertical route outside the numbers with Joey Porter Jr. is just a no-fly zone. Last year, he was targeted 13 times on goes, fades, or deep double moves. He allowed 2 receptions for 44 yards, and out of 46 corners with at least 10 targets, he had the 5th lowest success rate at 15.4%. This play against Calvin Ridley, he does a really good job of not over-committing to the outside release. He keeps a healthy distance between both of his feet before he fully opens his hips to the sideline. He uses an inside hand punch once Ridley declares his release, and then as he runs downfield, he works to replace his punch, maintain positioning over the top of the route. He got the game-sealing interception right here against Baltimore on this goal line fade. It's 4th and goal. Good job sliding his feet here to flatten the release, stay on top of the route for as long as possible, and once he's capped that initial release, then he can use his hands to maintain position over the top. This might look like a really inaccurate pass from Lamar Jackson, but he's just putting the ball where he would expect a receiver to be if they defeated the press coverage. But because Odell got completely stalled at the line of scrimmage, it ends up just going right to Joey Porter Jr. for the interception. A few years ago, I was in school studying engineering, and I just wasn't excited about doing that every day for the rest of my life. And I decided to start this YouTube channel and make the jump to covering sports full time, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And today's video is sponsored by Southern New Hampshire University's online sports management program, which lets you turn your passion for sports into a degree. Their programs are led by faculty with real-world experience, giving you the unique chance to learn from professionals and graduates, all while building connections in the industry. So if you're wanting to get your foot in the door in the sports world, go to snhu.edu/A to Z sports, also linked in the description, to see if you qualify for SNHU's sports management program. Next play against Amari Cooper, it's 3rd and goal from the 6. This play, he's going to fake the inside release, which does get a slight drop step from Joey Porter Jr. with the inside foot, but this is an example of a play where his length really comes in handy because he's got that right hand activated to catch an outside release. Almost simultaneously, as he steps with the inside foot, he's throwing up his outside hand. That slows down Cooper's release, but it also assists Porter in recovering outside leverage. He never really gets stacked at any point, so he doesn't have to turn. He can just keep his back to the end zone and play the ball. This play, DeAndre Hopkins never really gives a committed step with the inside foot, but he is trying to freeze him with his initial release. One thing I love about Joey Porter Jr. is he pretty much never reacts to foot fire when a receiver is releasing off the line of scrimmage. He's content to let a receiver waste time, take as many steps as they need before they finally get into their route. He's got the length to where he can punch outside of his frame without having to lean and overextend. He can reach out and catch a release when the receiver does have leverage and can win a slight edge on him, but he isn't having to reach so far outside of his cylinder that he sacrifices his foot speed. But then the other thing is that for a bigger corner, he's really fluid and explosive in his vertical transitions. Because he's so disruptive with his punch, receivers are hardly ever running full speed down the sideline, but there's very little delay or stiffness when he's transitioning from his punch to accelerating down the field. Another similar release here from Donovan Peoples-Jones. Again, not a committed inside step, just trying to freeze him at the top of the release. You watch Porter's feet, there's no panic or false steps. He takes a slight pop step, which is basically just resetting your base a half yards backwards to preserve breathing room. And then once he declares outside, Porter opens his hips, establishes his hands, works to stay over the top. When the receiver starts to look back for the ball, he turns his head and forces the incompletion on 4th and long. And then this 2-play sequence against Calvin Ridley from his first career start was really impressive. He runs pretty much the same route 2 plays in a row, just a stutter and go, stop and go type of route. Ridley gives the jab step to fake the inside release. That does nothing to Joey Porter. You definitely want a wider kick step with the outside foot. You can see he ends up clicking his heels here, and as we'll get into, that can give you problems and inhibit your recovery if the receiver releases back inside. But he mirrors the initial outside release. Ridley throttles down, fakes back inside. Porter's able to sink and stay with the fake and then recover back to the sideline once Ridley finally releases outside. Trevor Lawrence is locked on Ridley the entire play. He never gets open and he has to take the sack. The next play, Ridley runs pretty much the exact same route. The inside release fake does get Porter to step with the inside foot, but it's really impressive how explosive this kick step is to recover outside leverage, stay over the top of the route, and force the incompletion. So if you're matched up with Joey Porter Jr., outside releases are pretty much off the table. Like I said, he only allowed 2 receptions for 44 yards on go routes and fades, and both of those plays, he didn't even get beat from a route standpoint. He just gave up a catch, but it was tight coverage other than that. This first play against Jamar Chase, he does end up crossing his feet, which can leave you vulnerable to the inside, but for the most part, it's good coverage. He's capping the route, looking back for the ball. Porter's expecting a back shoulder fade, but it ends up high and outside. Perfect throw here to drop it right in the bucket. And then this play against Greg Dortch, he gets shifted inside a little bit by the release fake. Ultimately, he has no issue recovering to the outside, and it ends up being pretty tight coverage, but you can see midway through the play, he ends up fixing his glove, so he's like a half-second delayed turning and locating the ball. It goes right over his head and they convert the 3rd down. So those are the 2 main outside release plays that he gave up, but they were tightly contested catches with pretty good coverage, but just a better throw and catch. Where he did struggle in press coverage was dealing with inside releases. His footwork is so much improved from college with just one season of NFL coaching, but he did have some issues with opening the gate too early, overcommitting to fake outside releases. He still needs to get better at not leaning too far back on his heels so he can have a stronger recovery punch with the inside hand and be more ready to recover inside with his feet. And Amari Cooper was the receiver that gave him the most trouble with outside fake inside releases. He also got beat a couple times by DK Metcalf and Devontae Adams. This play, he's kick stepping with the outside release initially, doesn't get his hips manipulated or anything like that, but you can see he's leaning far back on his heels. When he tries to throw up this inside hand punch, even though he does have really long arms and he can make contact, it just kind of brushes the tips of his fingers, so Cooper can power right through that. And then leaning back and outside for a corner of his size, that's going to make it really difficult to redirect and recover inside leverage. Same kind of thing on this play, lined up in the slot. Cooper's using a diamond release where he fakes outside initially and then releases back inside. Porter could definitely do a better job staying square here in the early phases of the route. He isn't fully opened up or anything, but he's kind of tilted to the sideline a little bit. So when he tries to recover back inside, not only does he have to step inside with his feet, he also has to redirect his hips. But then you've also got the same problem of him kind of leaning back on his heels, falling away from the punch. Even though he's able to make contact, which is actually to the face mask, it's not a very impactful punch. Cooper can easily just swipe that away and separate. This play, he does open his hips a lot more and fully commit to the fake outside release. He gets a narrow base, he's leaning to the sideline. He two-hand punches, which kind of locks his hips, and when Cooper's able to release contact, he can't recover back over the middle. This play, DK Metcalf gets him completely turned to the outside. Right when Porter takes this hard backward step with the outside foot, Metcalf breaks inside on the slant. Porter hasn't established contact. He's leaning so far to the outside and has no chance of recovering. This play, Devontae Adams is threatening the outside release. He doesn't give an exaggerated outside step, but Porter kind of gets stuck with his footwork here, doesn't mirror step with the inside release, and he allows an uncovered slant, which Devontae Adams drops. And then this play, Alec Pierce fakes the outside release. Porter overreacts to that release fake. He clicks his heels, leverages himself completely outside of the receiver. He tries to recover with the inside hand punch, does an okay job initially, but Pierce is able to stack him down the field. But there still were examples of him shutting down inside releases. Even though he struggled with it overall, it's still so much improved from what his footwork looked like on his college tape. Really good job against this quick slant from Puka Nacua of being patient with his feet. He doesn't overcommit to the outside release fake, just takes a quick rhythm step, throws up the inside hand to establish contact, and then stays plastered to the route, gets the pass breakup. He got a pass breakup on a slant here from Christian Watson. Again, he doesn't take any extreme steps that he's going to have to recover from until the receiver fully declares his release inside. His length allows him to establish contact without having to reach too far outside of his cylinder, and it's also really useful at the catch point to shield the receiver from the ball. So he shut down enough inside releases on tape to where I'm confident it's something he can do at a high level. And if it's an inside release, vertical, or seam route, he didn't really have any issues with that. But press coverage against quick slants, he's just got to get more consistently patient with his footwork, make sure he's not stepping himself out of position, clicking his heels, crossing his feet, leaning too far to the outside. I think given the technical development that he's shown on tape the last 2 years, you can feel pretty confident this is something that will improve. The one thing that I think might be a slight limitation for Joey Porter is staying connected to stop routes and comebacks. That was the one route that I think he most consistently had trouble covering in his rookie year. For players that are that tall with such a high cut build, it can be really difficult to decelerate and sink your hips once you're at full speed. DeAndre Hopkins beats him here on a comeback that was probably the one route that he actually won in this entire game. Amari Cooper was able to wipe down the inside hand punch and separate on this stop route from week 11. And then Stephon Diggs beat him a couple times in the wild card round on stops and comebacks. This first one wasn't catchable. The second one here results in a third down conversion. Off coverage was another area that I thought he showed real improvement from his last year of college to his rookie season. His back pedal and his footwork in and out of breaks was so much cleaner. He didn't have as many reps from off coverage, but I thought he showed a lot of really promising things. This play against Cleveland, he's in a side turn back to the sideline. He's able to open back up, break on this deep out and get the pass break up. And then nice play here from the second Browns matchup on third down to break on this quick slant, tips the ball up, and it gets intercepted. Zone coverage was a bit of a mixed bag. I don't have too many concerns going forward. In his first start, he gave up the one touchdown he allowed all season on a coverage bust. He kind of zones off to the flat here to cover Calvin Ridley, but he needs to run with a vertical route from the number one. Depending on the coverage call, this could be the safety's responsibility, but I'm pretty sure I remember them confirming after the game that this was on Joey Porter. But there were also flashes of elite zone coverage instincts. I think when he just gets more reliable and assignment secure, he can be a really good zone corner. This play against the Colts, he's initially widening out with the flat route from Kylan Granson, but he sees the vertical leaking out from Mo Alley Cox. When Minshew releases the ball, he makes a last second turn, gets over the top. The camera's moving, so it's pretty blurry, but just a miraculous pass breakup here. And then this play, it's third down. They're in cover two. Bengals are running a slant flat concept. He slides a step inside with the slant, but he's got good field vision to identify the flat route, makes a break into the passing lane, and he's like an inch away from getting a pick six. I think penalties are something you're just gonna have to live with Joey Porter Jr., at least to a certain extent. He was called for 12 penalties last year, third highest penalty rate among NFL corners. And for someone like Joey Porter Jr., who's this physical with his hands at the line of scrimmage, the way that NFL refs call pass interferences, like he's just gonna get a few of those every year. Like every corner that I cover, they've got a few penalties that I just wholeheartedly disagree with. If there's one thing NFL refs love to do, it's take textbook press man coverage reps and ruin them with a penalty call. But Porter does need to get better at releasing contact once they're past the 5-yard window. Pretty much every corner is gonna use their hands down the field. Like that's what defensive backs coach teach. There's no corner that just has their hands glued to their hips and they're not feeling out the route or trying to disrupt the receiver's route or anything like that. But when he's using his hands down the field, he needs to get his hands lower on the hip so that when the receiver cuts, it's less egregious and obvious from the ref standpoint. If you're grabbing up on the shoulder pads, when they make an in cut, it's obvious, you can see that jersey extension. But I do think the 15 to 20 reps in any given game where Porter's completely smothering the receiver at the line of scrimmage outweighs the one time that he gets called for an illegal contact. The final thing to discuss is tackling and run defense. Tackling was a concern for Joey Porter Jr. coming out of college. It usually is for taller corners. They just have a more difficult time breaking down an open space, redirecting with shifty ball carriers. And it looked like that was going to continue in the NFL. In his first 8 games, he had 5 missed tackles, and 5 of those games he wasn't even playing full time. He was playing like 15 snaps a game. But then the last 10 games, he only had 1 missed tackle and a 3.4% missed tackle rate. So he pretty much completely eliminated that as a problem from his game. You want to see it play out over the course of an entire season, but I'm actually pretty confident that Porter can be a reliable tackler in the NFL. And I was also pleasantly surprised by his run support as a rookie. As an outside corner, he isn't involved in the run fit that often, so he didn't make a ton of big plays in that phase. His run stop rate was pretty low when you compare it to other corners, but he isn't like a lot of outside pure cover corners that are kind of passive, disinterested in run defense. He plays with physicality. He uses his length to stack and shed blocks on the perimeter. He's a physical tackler. He doesn't lose contain too often or sacrifice his gap. Not going to be the headline thing that he brings to the table, but when the play comes to him, he will absolutely make it. This is my full scouting report for Joey Porter Jr. based on his rookie season only. I think the Steelers got a true number one lockdown type of corner. If he can continue to clean up his footwork and get better against inside releases and the tackling improvement sustains going forward, he can definitely be a top 5, top 3 corner in the NFL.